As you're arriving, I invite you to close your eyes and start to draw your attention inward. Giving yourself a moment to just be present with yourself before we dive into some really fiery and deep material tonight. So, in your own space, go ahead with your eyes closed and begin to just start to feel your pelvis, feel the root of your body, and drop your cord of connection. Feel that connection to the earth energy. And I want you to feel yourself drawing that Shakti up through the cord on a deep inhale. And exhaling and feeling that Shakti, that energy, that divine feminine life force energy just beginning to swirl around in the pelvic area. And go ahead and take in another deep breath, inhaling up through the cord. And on your exhale, feel that Shakti, that golden liquid light, that energy of the divine feminine just beginning to circulate throughout the body. And if you're familiar with Breath of Fire, what we're going to do is we're going to do a round of Breath of Fire where we do 20 exhalations. And I want you to imagine that this Shakti that you're bringing in, you're starting to let it become fused with that fire, that the fire energy is starting to infuse it, liquefy it, move that energy around. So we'll inhale for a round of 20 exhalations. And then a deep inhale. Pausing at the top of the inhale. And then exhaling it out. We'll do one more round. And if you're not familiar with Breath of Fire, you can just go ahead and continue your deep breathing. And we'll inhale for a round of 30 exhalations. And begin. Deep inhalation. Pausing at the top of the inhalation and then exhaling out. With the eyes closed, just pausing for a moment. Noticing how you feel in your body. And then we'll inhale for one Ma chant together. Inhaling. Ma. And just feeling into your own body right now, an invitation for the warrior goddess to pay a visit with you tonight. This archetype of the divine feminine, just opening yourself to her. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes. So, beauties, we had 2 weeks to extend the sensual goddess with Lakshmi. And now tonight, we're diving into a very different energy. And I'm just curious who feels like you're really excited and ready for the warrior goddess. Raise your hand if that's you. If you're like, yes. So, okay, wait. Raise your hand if you're ready, if you're feeling excited for the warrior goddess. One more time. I just want to see who is. Okay. So some of you are, some of you are not quite. And a lot of times when women start to do this work, there's an energy around the sensual goddess that it's like, that's what it really means to connect to the goddess, is to open, to be more receptive, to feel sensual. And it's an energy that we so desperately need. And so there can be a tendency to want to really hang out in that and extend that time. And of course, you have the rest of your life to continue to work with her energy, work with these goddesses, work with these practices. And what can happen is, if we stay too long with her, there's a stagnation that can occur, a kind of imbalance. And we need the warrior goddess. We need her. A lot of times women feel like, well, I know her. That's kind of who I overdose on. I'm too much of a warrior goddess. I'm a career woman. I'm always like goal oriented. I'm always doing, and I need just this being energy. And what I'd offer is, if you're feeling that, most likely it is because you've engaged with this energy in what I would call as a wounded warrior goddess, as a kind of perverted expression of this divine archetype. A disembodied version of this, a very mental version of this. And the true expression of the warrior goddess is a very embodied, very wild feminine expression. She takes us into finding and accessing emotions and feelings within our bodies that we maybe have not given ourselves permission to own or even admit that we have. She brings a fire that can actually really help us activate the sensual goddess energy and feel more connected to her. So sometimes women come, and it's actually interesting because I think Faye, I'm not sure if Faye is here tonight. I know she's on vacation in Europe. And when Faye took the course the first time, I remember very clearly that one of her intentions was to feel more sexy. And I don't think she would mind me sharing this at all. And at that time, her partner had said, okay, well, let's keep in conversation around this, and I'll reflect back to you when I see that the most. And we did the sensual goddess portion, and she opened up and connected to her sensuality. But it was actually in the middle of the warrior goddess part that her sexiness actually really came alive, and her partner saw it. And the reason for that, one of the reasons, is that this fiery energy allows us to take what's going on in here and bring it out into the world. And the fire, the sensual goddess energy, all of these goddesses of the rivers and the oceans, that's water energy. And if we don't have enough fire in our physicality, if the pilot light isn't really lit, what happens is that water energy becomes frozen. and it can't fully manifest and express through us. So they have a very synergistic relationship, these two goddess energies. And the other thing that can happen when we're connecting to the wounded warrior goddess is that we activate this kind of, in many cases what it is it's actually masculine energy that we're kind of wounded masculine even energy that we're living in because of this paradigm that we've talked about on earlier classes, this paradigm that really is the vibration of wounded masculine energy. And to fit into that, we've taken that on. The warrior goddess is the masculine within the feminine, but we don't lose the sensual goddess. It's like if we take her and then we bring this other energy without losing her sensuality, if we're able to bring that, then we're able to really live as this warrior goddess, which has this energy of the flow of the water and then the direction and force of the fire together. And it's something that, as I talk about movement with you, I'm going to really encourage you to explore in dancing and expression. Like, how can you keep that undulation and keep that femininity and then bring the force and direction of fire? So I would love to share some slides with you to start to introduce you to this new realm that we are diving into tonight. So these first couple images are just images that I saw and I pulled out that felt really like they carried the energy of the warrior goddess. This first one, the woman who's standing next to this fire, and it feels like possibly she set this fire off, or maybe it's a sacred bonfire, or she's burning down something that no longer is serving her, but there's a strength in her stance in a way that she's standing next to this fire. And then next to her is just this wild expression of this woman kind of like being like a tigress in a way and yelling and letting her voice be free and kind of showing this fierce toughness. And then here we have this woman who I love who's sitting in this chair with just feels so badass. Like she seems sort of like a corporate woman whose just boundaries are so firm and she's so clearly sitting in her strength. And then above her is a woman with a sword that she's about to bring out, and she has a look in her eyes that's very fierce. And then here are some of the goddesses from around the world that carry this energy. So this archetype, these three archetypes are universal, and we see them repeated again and again and again. Anywhere where we have a goddess history and culture, we'll have a warrior goddess, a goddess that shows up with this ferocity and holding weapons. And so that first image in the top is Sekhmet from Egypt, and she is the lion-headed goddess. And she's also solar energy. She's connected to the heat of the sun. And we have Oya from Africa. She's the African Yoruban sister of Oshun, who we've met already. And she is the goddess of winds and thunder, lightning storms. So the wild winds and the lightning storms. So she's an expression of this fierce energy through Mother Nature. And then we have Artemis, who we're going to spend some time with this evening, who is the huntress, the warrior goddess from Greece. And then we have Kali, who is very fierce, goddess from India, the Hindu goddess. This is an image here that is a kind of a fantasy image of Hecate, and I really like it because I just feel her intensity, and she's holding a sword in her hand, and there's just this wild fierceness to her. And then, of course, here is the image that is on the first page of your manual for the warrior goddess. And I say here, where we summon our strength, our power, and determination, and raise the bar and raise the fires for deep transformation by honoring our truth and having the courage to go into our shadow. So this course is called Embodied Feminine Leadership. And these archetypes are really the keys to becoming the most empowered leader possible. And she is such an ally and such a key for us in our leadership. She helps us really own our voice and stand in our strength and place down our boundaries. And I think it's vitally important for us as women to really understand her healthy expression, because we see in our culture a kind of false version of her, a toughened version of her, or a armored version of her, or a version of her that's kind of bitchy. And we're going to talk about this word as we move through the course, but in a way that she's not fully authentic or in her integrity. And I would love to get some responses from you on what you feel when you see this particular image. And I want you to take a moment and really look at her and see what you notice. In a moment, I'll take us off screen share, and I would like to just hear a little bit. Lucy says she's very excited. I just looked into the chat. So what I would love is for you to either raise a hand if you want to share, or if you're more comfortable typing something into the chat, type into the chat. But I would love to hear some of what you noticed and what you feel looking at that image. Blanca says she's very excited. The warrior I can relate, is the goddess I can relate to the most. It resonates very deeply with me. Beautiful, beautiful. What do you notice about that particular image, either looking at your manual, the one that I just had up on the screen for you? Power, Blanca says. Fire in the eyes, Emily says. So powerful. Darkness as power instead of weakness or shame or victimhood. Beautiful. Unbridled power, Sumi says. Rawness, kind of scary. Totally in control. Right. So why I chose this image is, it's very specific for me. And what I find about this image is that there is a darkness, as Emily noticed, and Sumi even said it could be kind of scary, that there's an intensity to her. And she literally, it's like she has electricity, like fireballs coming out of her hands, almost like lightning between her hands. You can see the power that she has. And there's fire behind her. And there's intensity in her eyes. At first, it almost looks like she's looking down. And then you notice that her eyes are actually looking straight ahead at you. And it feels as if she's in some sort of a ritual, right? It's like you almost imagine she's standing over a cauldron, or in the midst of conjuring something. And it can feel almost scary, because there's so much power there, and that you could actually feel that she could do harm. right? If she wanted to. That's how powerful she is. It's like there's literally, it's like fireballs in her hands. And I think we're all pretty clear looking at her, like no one wants to fuck with her, right? Like you just like don't want to go there with her. It's very clear that that would probably not be a good idea. And at the same time, when you really look at this image, do you feel that she intends to do harm? Tiffany says, channeling her power for a deep, inner, confident place. Yeah, right? Deep. You can feel that her power comes from a very deep, very embodied place. She's not putting on a show of power. She's not bulky, strong. She's not armored. In fact, she's practically naked. Yet you can feel her power. And I would offer that what we feel when we look at her as well, generally, is that it seems that however she's going to use that is going to be for good, that she's actually not intending to hurt anyone or do any harm, that she's coming from a place that has an intention of a higher good for all. But she's not going to shrink. She's not going to play small. She's going to let people know that you do not fuck with this. I am so connected to my power. And I am going to use that for good. There's a sense that she's connected to something higher, right? There's a sense of sacredness about her, a sense of connection to the divine. Megan, she feels no need to do harm, but she knows her power and is unafraid to use it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is, I'm going to be honest, and I mean, not like that I would normally share this, but this is the one for me that I always need to remind myself to go into. I more naturally can fall into my sensual goddess and my compassionate goddess. Those are very, very natural energies for me. The warrior goddess has always been there for me, but she's the one that out of the triangle, the one that I kind of have to like sometimes get in there and be like, oh, pull her up. And it's sort of like, for me, when she clicks into place, everything else shines so much better, is so much more supported. And I used to live in New York, and now I live in California. And when I was living in New York, this energy was so much easier for me to connect to because it was kind of supported even by the linear layout of the city and the intensity and, you know, wearing my black leather and, you know, high heel boots and that kind of thing. And then moving out to California, it's like, this is a place that has so much more circles, like more circular energy. It's more sensual goddess, more compassionate goddess. And so this is a one that I get so excited to share and teach because it's always a reminder for me to bring it up within myself. And I feel like it's something that's so needed here in LA, where I live, in the conscious community. And for women who either identify with being a conscious spiritual girl or being Christian or being good, just being good, this one is easy to kind of put to the side. And like I said, I'll talk in a moment, I'll talk to you really about what this the false kind of wounded version of her is. We'll live in that. We'll live in this mental version, but we'll be kind of afraid to really go into the intensity and the darkness and the rawness of the true archetype. And Blanca says, I can see that. That's what draws me to you. The fierce is the easiest for me to be in, right? Yeah. And it's interesting because as we learn this language with the goddesses, you can start to pick up in different women, you know, you can kind of see, oh, she's really in her compassionate goddess or she's in her sensual goddess. You can feel that. And we are attracted. You know, one of my best friends is a woman that I met in New York, and she was just totally fierce, you know, just complete warrior goddess, but really needed that sensual energy. And it's like there's an attraction that happens, and through our friendship, she really helped support me in my warrior goddess, and I helped her in her sensual. And because I've done this journey, it's really, really fun for me to teach, because I understand where the blocks are for us about connecting to her. So I'm gonna, yeah. So the warrior goddess, if you turn to the page in the next page after this image, so I think we've got her and like why she's there. We understand that it's like this true expression is a woman. What I love about her is she leads with the warrior goddess, but you can see that her sensual goddess is not completely gone. Like, she's sexy. There's a sensuality that's still there, right? And we feel that tinge of the compassionate goddess, where we feel that there's love, that she's going to be a wild warrioress of love, right? That there is something deeper and divine and inherently good about where she's going with this energy, with this understanding. And certainly, you know, we live in a time where we can see that we're being asked as women to step into being more of an activist and being someone who is standing up for things and using our voice and being a warrior for the good. And she reminds us that we always need to be able to connect to that. So how do you know that you need more warrior goddess energy in your life? Well, one is if you're feeling stuck in old, comfortable patterns. So she is this fire energy. The energy of the warrior goddess is the energy of transformation. So whenever you're feeling stuck in something in your life, it's a good moment to ask yourself, maybe I need to bring in some of this energy. Maybe I need to step up into my warrior goddess. She moves through anything that's stagnated. The sensual goddess can actually, as I was saying earlier, kind of, if we kind of hang out in that energy too long, there's a way that we can become stagnant. And sometimes we need this fire to come through to help us transform something. The qualities that we explore when we're in the warrior goddess archetype is courage, like as a baseline, courage, our personal power, our clarity of vision, focusing on goals, removing illusions, cleansing and detoxifying processes and practices, independence, self-sufficiency, placing down boundaries, trusting our ability to protect ourselves, taking a stand for ourselves, raising our standards. That's one I love to look at. It's like, where are my standards? And she's very much about your no. The sensual goddess, she's about discovering your yes. So that's where we looked at, what do I desire? What brings me pleasure? How can I open myself more? Where are my yeses? The warrior goddess is more focused on really feeling what you're a no to. What do you need to let go of? That's why detoxification, cleansing practices on a physical level, but also in your life. Like, what do I need to let go of? What relationships are not serving me anymore? Where have I let my standards go? And can I take a stand for them strongly? Harnessing energy for change and transformation. So another place where you can see that you need more warrior goddess energy is when you have a hard time standing up for yourself or speaking truth. If you kind of gloss over things, you always want to make everything sound nice. You're having trouble maintaining healthy boundaries. If you find it difficult to speak about your needs, your preferences, and your opinions. If you're uncomfortable expressing anger or ugly emotions, which would also be grief. or you stuff down those feelings until they explode out in an emotional tantrum, right? So that would be a wounded expression. So sometimes we're so busy being nice and good and pretty and kind of keeping all that stuff down that eventually gets to a point where it explodes out. And we can be very irresponsible in that. A healthy version is where, in a moment by moment, day to day way, we are able to express our preferences. We're able to say no, to place down those boundaries so it doesn't build up in that way. If you know you need to make a change, but you're not sure how to begin, or you're having a hard time getting the motivation to do it. So it could be something around your career or something around a relationship or creativity. Some of the physical signs are digestive issues and constipation. So again, stagnation, excess congestion, mucus, sinus issues, again, things not moving, not having circulation in the body. She's located in the gut. So it's that gut brain, that gut instinct. And that's really where in our body we feel our boundaries often. And that's also the place where we stuff a lot of these emotions that we don't want to feel. So that part of our body can get kind of stagnated when we're not accessing her energy. And then what about this kind of wounded or false version of her that I talked about? So in general, one of the ways that that happens is that we are rewarded in our culture for embodying this energy in a mental way, as I said. So being a good strategist, keeping her all in the head is one of the things that we do. And not allowing her to actually become infused in with our body wisdom and our body brain. And that can be something that can be very depleting over time. And it's not the true expression of her. It's also when we kind of have an imbalance in the other energies and we've leaned into her, and we can be easy to argue, become so protective that we're rigid or dogmatic, lacking flexibility, are disconnected to our sensual feminine nature. We push people away. Our boundaries are too thick. We're too armored. We have a hard time relaxing and experiencing pleasure. We become inaccessible or unapproachable, stuck in our head, disconnected from our heart and disconnected from our womb and our sensual instincts, using very stiff, sharp, angular gestures. Even you can hear it sometimes in the voice. I can remember a client I had many years ago. I was working with her one-on-one, and she was kind of living in her wounded warrior goddess, and she was wanting to invite more play and romance into her life. And she was getting ready for a date, and she shared with me that she was getting ready, and she went and she showed her friend what she was going to wear. And what she was wearing was basically like a turtleneck and like a kind of a business suit. And it was like she was so in this professional warrior version of herself that it was very hard for her to connect into that feminine and sensual self. So the real divine expression of her keeps all this sensuality we've been working with, right? We keep Lakshmi, we keep Oshun, we keep connected to that oracle between our legs. We keep feeling her. We let her fuel our warrior goddess. When we're just trying to lean into that energy and we're not balanced, we become very depleted because we're not filling our tank. We're just pushing and pushing. So what you're going to be really learning and playing with as we move through the warrior goddess is really understanding this distinction between the more wounded masculine energy and what the true warrior goddess energy is. How to still stay in your feminine energy and also really harness this kind of fire and direction. So one of the real ways to go in and start to connect with her right off the bat is to start to connect to her physically. Is to start to give yourself freedom and permission to let this energy move into your body, to let yourself dance with her. It's one of the things I want to keep just encouraging you around, because as we're moving through here, you're sitting on a computer with me, and I'm going to do some physical work with you tonight, but I want to encourage you around in your home practice every day to be continuing to bring these goddesses into your body and to dance, to move, to find music that connects you to her. And we're going to meet our first warrior goddess. I just want to see what Megan shared. As I watched my cat focus on a hunt today, I thought about how the warrior goddess has been tamed in me. I felt a strong desire to release her. Beautiful, beautiful. The cat, in particular, like lions and tigers, like wild cats, are symbols that are associated with many of the warrior goddesses. And as women, that's an excellent way to drop in, is to actually feel yourself as a cat, because the cat has, like the feline has a certain feminine way that it moves its body. There's something that can allow us to feel a connection to that. Yet there's this ferocity and this fierceness, right? Like this is a kitty cat on a hunt, but if you feel into like the lion or the tiger, and we'll talk more about that when we get to Durga, and we'll touch on Sekhmet, who's the lion-headed warrior goddess from Egypt. But to really play with roaring, and we'll be playing a little bit with some voice in this section as well. But to play with, like, really in your morning practice while you're on your mat, to sometimes go into feeling yourself as a cat. I love, in one of my in-person temple nights here in LA, we had a theme which was Catwoman one night, and it's just so fun. Like, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, like it's a great archetype to play with, but it's also taking you kind of into that shadow, into the darkness, but playing with that wild that feline character that's within us. So tonight we're gonna meet Artemis, who's our first warrior goddess. I'm gonna do a screen share with you. So Artemis, one second. All right, there we go. Artemis is kind of like a little bit of a gentle entry point into the warrior goddess. We're not going to start with the most intense, dark, Kali energy. Artemis is really gorgeous in that she holds this lunar feminine energy and also this really independent, fierce warrior goddess energy at the same time. And of course, she's the Greek. Diana is the Roman version of her. This, basically the same goddess, this huntress who has her bow and arrow. And she's really holds the energetic of the wild feminine, of nature, and of the moon. And it has a deep connection to the womb, which we'll talk about as well. Here she is on the left with her bow and arrow, and those are her hunting dogs around her. And then on the right is a little more of a modern take of her. in the forest. And behind her, that looks like actually the temple. And there's a stag. And again, another kind of wild modern take on her. One more. Sort of a dark version. I would love to just get a little feedback from you, what you feel when you see her. What do you notice? Put in any words that you feel. Magical. Love that. Confident. Badass. Fearless. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about her story so you have an understanding of her. So Artemis, focused and calm. Yeah, right? Yeah, it's like with that bow and arrow, it's like she's so focused and calm, totally fearless and a badass, but it's like she's not in a state of she's wild, but not like in a frenzied kind of wild. It's very quiet and calm. So she is the goddess of the hunt and lives in the wilderness with her circle of women. And her story is that she was born from the nymph Leto as her mother, and her father is Zeus, who was the kind of the king of the gods up on Mount Olympus. And the story goes that he was having an affair with Leto, and his wife, Hera, found out and was very upset and started chasing Leto right as she was about to give birth. And so she's pregnant with twins, actually, because Apollo, who's the sun god, is her brother, her twin brother. And she's running. And as she's running, trying to get away from Hera, the jealous wife. And the thing about the Greek and Roman stories is we're already kind of in a little bit of a patriarchal time. So some of the characters are presented in this way. Hera actually has a history of being a really beautiful, deep goddess that kind of became just this jealous wife in this story. But while she's chasing Leto and she's pregnant, she gives birth. And Artemis comes out first. And immediately Artemis turns around and helps her mother give birth to her brother Apollo. So Artemis is known to be a midwife. She is a goddess of midwifery, of birthing, even though she herself actually never has a child. She remains a virgin. She's a virgin goddess. But immediately when she's born, she actually comes into the role of helping her mom give birth to her brother. And on her first birthday, they say that she went to Mount Olympus and she sat on Zeus's knee and she said, I want for my birthday, and she had a whole list. It was like a scroll kind of went, and she started listing all the things that she wanted for her birthday. And the first thing that she wanted was she wanted a bow and arrow like her brother. And she also wanted to always live her life as a virgin and to be a bachelorette and never have to be married. And she wanted hunting dogs and stags to lead her chariot and 80 virgin nymphs to be her hunting companions. And she wanted to live in the forest. She wanted to have her own kingdom and area in the forest separate from the city. That was hers alone. So we've learned right away about Artemis that she knows what she wants. Very, very clear, like down to the detail. I want this many hunting dogs. I want this many stags, this many virgin nymphs. Definitely not afraid to ask for it. She's going up to Zeus, who's like the head of all the gods, and her dad, and she's saying, this is what I want. She also is very clear that she has a twin brother. And anything that he has, she wants to have. Why does he have a bow and arrow? I want a bow and arrow also. Anything he can do, I can do, kind of thing. And there's a couple different versions and variations of the story, and some of them she has to go through certain trials to get all of these things. And in some versions, they simplify it and say that, he just kind of thinks he's so charmed by her that he right away wants to give her everything she asked for. The bow and arrow, by the way, that she gets was made by Hephaestus. Remember who he is? That was Aphrodite's husband. And he made for Aphrodite her girdle, the golden girdle that made her desirable to all men, that no one could, that no one could basically deny her when she wore that girdle. He made all of the weapons. He was the metalsmith for the gods, and they all had magical qualities. So Aphrodite has something that makes her desirable and can draw to her and attract anything that she wants. Artemis has a bow and arrow that can never miss its mark. She has a magical arrow that will always hit its mark. So you can feel into, just by the difference in these two weapons, or these two objects that he made, the difference in the goddesses. One is attracting, the other is going out and hitting its mark without fail. So Artemis goes and she lives. She has this territory that's all hers, that's just wild in nature, separate from the cities, separate from civilization. And she lives there with her female companions, her nymphs. And we learn from this, or we connect into, when we connect with her, this part of ourself that is very connected to nature, that is pure and wild and free, that wants to be unbounded by man's laws. It's kind of like she was saying, I don't want to have to follow all of your rules and live your way. I want to go do my own thing with my women. And so she represents this energy and this part of ourself that wants to engage in women's circles, that wants to do work with just women. This part of ourselves that is enlivened and connected by other feminine energy in this very independent way. She represents the independent, wild, feminine spirit. She also is this huntress. So she's not just off in the forest dancing around. They're doing that as well, but she's a huntress. She has this bow and arrow, and that's what she's most identified with. That's what really nourishes and feeds her. And she's also very connected to the lunar energy. So very often in the images of Artemis, we will see she'll have like a crescent moon on her forehead, or a crescent moon headdress somewhere. And her brother Apollo is the sun god. So it's very clear that she is this lunar energy, that she's representing this feminine energy, even though she's goal-oriented. She's so directed in that way. She's a hunter. She's got this outward energy. And yet, at the same time, she's so connected to the lunar moon energy, which, of course, is intuition. It's feminine wisdom. And, our menstrual cycle, our procreative energies, all are connected to the cycles of the moon. And she's very deeply connected to that. And as women, when we go and we spend time in nature and we connect to the moon, there's a way that we drop into ourselves and into our instincts that is challenging to connect to in a city or in society. She's also this midwifery energy. And one of the things I find so powerful about kind of connecting these aspects of her, and I don't find actually very often anyone that really pulls all these pieces quite together in this way, but is that she's showing us the feminine way of manifesting our goals. Okay? She has an arrow that never misses its mark. Goal orientation. She's also connected to the moon and to birthing. So it's helping us really connect that our process of manifesting as women is a process of birthing. It's a process of birthing our gifts into the world. And really understanding, and just for a moment, just dropping into that energy of what a woman goes through in the process of conception, gestation, and birthing a child. And for those of you that are mothers who've gone through this process, you know this very well. And for those who are not, it's really imagining and just feeling into what you know about that. And understanding that that process is very similar to our own creative process. And that there is, in the process of giving birth to something, there is incredible strength, right? Like a woman in that moment, especially if you're pushing a baby out, you know, we like every woman's process is of course different. You know, some women have ecstatic births in like hot tubs, but very often you'll see women like the raw strength, raw power that's happening in that process. And at the same time, the softening, the opening, the widening that's taking place within a woman to allow that, and that it's moving through our yoni, it's coming through our sexual center. So just, really feeling into all of that and how that informs how we as women offer our gifts into the world and how we manifest things. She's a tremendous goddess to call and support for a project, for any vision of something new that you want to bring forth. And she also is a great goddess to help us really drop in and connect to the power of the womb. And in some of the other courses I teach, we go much more deeply into the process of awakening the womb energetics and really working with that. And here we're going to touch on it just a little bit. And I want to invite you to just start to feel into, I'm going to say hello and start to connect to the possibility that there is this tremendous power energetically that resides within your womb space. So I just spoke to you about the physical process that a woman goes through in the birthing and the gestation and the power of the womb. And we also have, on the subtle level, an energetic connection to that. So energetically, our womb is this real portal between the sort of subtle spiritual realms and the material realm, right? Because it is through a woman's womb that a new soul, a new spirit comes into physical form. And when we can start to tap into the energetics of that within ourselves, we become another kind of woman. And what I'd say is we become a womb-centered woman. If we can allow ourselves to really drop that center of gravity, which is something I speak so much about, and we drop it with the sensual goddess into really that pleasure portal, the sexual aspect of the yoni, But it also travels, that energetic travels all the way up really to the womb space as well. And the womb space is where we begin to alchemize the energy of the warrior goddess and the sensual goddess. That is the space within us. So when you picture that triangle, that base of the triangle, the sensual goddess and the warrior goddess, they're alchemized together within the womb. So sensual goddess is, in many ways, it's like it's yoni, it's vagina, it's our sexual procreative organs that are connected to the pleasure. And the warrior goddess is located within our body in the gut, in our gut instincts. But really deeper in a woman's body is that womb space. And that womb space is like the cauldron where those two energies alchemize. So I experience and see the witch's cauldron that we see these witches kind of, I'm gonna put a little eye of newt and this and stir it and make magic spell. That yes, perhaps we can, and that in many ways is referencing women like taking herbs and things like that from the forest and making healing things. So, that not that women didn't do that physically in the world, but it's very much a metaphor for what takes place within our own body. And that cauldron is really the womb within us. And if you think about what a cauldron is, that's really where water energy and fire energy combine, right? So it's a pot that's holding water and liquid, and then it's got fire underneath it, and that creates a steam that goes up. And within our own body, that space is where we're alchemizing those two energies. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that, just to kind of plant a seed with you tonight about the power and the potency of the womb. And your invitation in your work over the next week, part of it is going to be to start to just tune into that. And I'll give you a few guide points about how to do that. And as we connect into that space, we start to connect into really understanding and experiencing and feeling the energetics of Artemis, of that archetypal divine feminine, that particular expression, where she so beautifully really holds this lunar feminine energy and this direct masculine expression of the goal orientation. And there is a magical quality to her and a wildness to her. And one last thing I'll say is that, activating this womb energy, at least dropping your center of gravity so that you can feel yourself centered there more. One of the kind of practice points for you with this can be how you walk and move through space, letting yourself be guided by the womb. Very often, because our energy is so up here, it's like we're kind of like this, and the body's sort of behind, and we're kind of jaggedy in our movements. When we become a womb-centered woman, we become a woman who is so potent and so powerful. We very rarely actually see this. It's like a new breed of woman that's coming. And this is a woman who is so deeply connected to her power. And at the same time, fluid in her femininity, but really moving through space, really centered from there, being directed from there. And there really, truly is deep, deep wisdom, like an oracle of wisdom that resides within that womb space. And the more that we can allow ourselves to be led from there, guided from there, the more consistently we are in our power. So some of the visions I offered you in our first couple classes about what it can mean, what it can be like to be a truly embodied feminine leader, to be a woman who's really living in her embodied wisdom. So much of that really is this piece. But it's really allowing this incredible consciousness, this brain. It's like more than a brain, because it's like the divine brain, this divine consciousness that speaks through this part of our body, to really allow ourselves to be led from that place. And from this place, it's like our yes and our no's are so incredibly clear. We're so confident in speaking our truth from that place. We move through space in a way that is searingly potent and powerful, and yet at the same time is like this beautiful oceanic flow of water all at once. So I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance about some ways to start to tune into that, but really feeling the connection between the moon and the lunar energy and nature and our own womb, and how that also supports us in being very clear about our boundaries, very directed in our focus, and birthing our visions and gifts into the world. I want to offer you a couple other little stories about Artemis as well. She is very much a protectress of boundaries, a protectress of her values and those that she loves, protectress of her land, protectress of the purity of her environment and her space. And if anyone infringes upon those boundaries, she can be quite ferocious in how she will respond to that. And one story is that Actaeon, a hunter, mistakenly wandered into her territory in the forest, and her nymphs, her companions, and herself, they were all bathing. Were like naked and bathing in the water, and he was in the bushes watching. And Artemis turned and saw his beady little eyes looking through the bush, and became furious that her boundaries had been crossed. And according to the story, what she did was she turned him into a stag, and his hunting dogs ate him. So quite ferocious when her boundaries are crossed. Very, very clear about what is okay and what's not okay. And, when Artemis first came to me, I had been teaching her a little bit and didn't have a strong personal connection yet. And then a couple years ago, I had an experience where I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I would feel myself pulling back like a bow and arrow. And then I would see these visions of these like crossed arrows all around my house, like across the windows and the doors. And I kept feeling, I'd wake up and I would just feel myself pulling back this bow and arrow. And after that was happening for a few nights, I realized, wow, okay, I think Artemis is trying to speak to me here. And I got up and I really spent some time that morning, early in the morning, just really meditating with her and just writing down everything that was coming through. And at that particular time, there was a neighbor of mine who was kind of looking in my windows a lot and kind of crossing boundaries and kind of being a little bit of a peeping Tom. And I was a little uncomfortable around it. And it was so clear when that came through that I had to be really firm about creating some boundaries there and really not letting his energy infringe on my space. And it was also a time where I was in a moment where I was really trying to make a decision about something, and I was stalling and a little bit stressed out, not sure how to handle this particular situation. And it was once I tapped in and I felt her moving through me, and I started writing, on the page, bows and arrows, and feeling her energy come through, and just let my voice really come in. I got very clear on what I needed to do, and I began to take action right away. So she's such a great goddess to call upon in these kinds of situations. And what you may begin to notice as you start to learn about these goddesses is you're going to feel when they start wanting to talk to you, little things will show up in your world. But it's sometimes they come and they're kind of tugging on you, like, hey, pay attention. And sometimes we get it and we just call them in and embody it right away. But she's just a phenomenal goddess to work with in the capacity of taking action, of knowing what direction to go, pulling the trigger on something, not stalling anymore, placing down those boundaries, speaking those difficult truths. And at the same time, there's this energy of hers that's this wild, free, untamed feminine, the untamed feminine. So within that, it's not just this kind of narrow version of it. It's really letting yourself feel like fully expressed as a woman and in your feminine energy. So that's what I'll share about Artemis. And what I invite you, one of the homework practices that I invite you to do this week, it's interesting because we're basically upon the new moon right now. So the moon's going to be very small. As she starts to become visible again, you're starting to get that crescent moon. I would love for you to spend some time, if possible, connecting to the moon and connecting to your womb and making a connection between the two of them. That's a great way for you to actually feel your womb. Now, depending on where you live, this could be more challenging or a little bit easier. And if it's possible where you live, I was really fortunate in my place where I used to live in Venice, which is that I had these huge windows in my living room, and I could just watch the moon go around like her path all night. And I could lay right on my daybed in the living room and place my hands on the womb, and like prop myself up on pillows and just stare at the moon and like have this beautiful meditation going back and forth, where I would just breathe into the womb space and feel the energy of the moon and feel them communicating and connecting. Now, not everyone is going to be able to do that. And so if you're not able to do that, you can do it in pieces, which is, I invite you just to find the moon in the sky. Pay attention to the moon this week. And again, like I said, she's very small, the new moon right now. But whenever you're able to catch a glimpse of her, just kind of say hello. Just feel her. Let her impact you. Breathe into her. Feel what she brings out in you. And then separately, you can find a time to lay down and place your hands over the womb area and just breathe in. Just take in some deep breaths and see if you can locate and just connect to that energetic center in your body. Does anyone have a question around connecting to the womb? I'm giving you very, like, in my more advanced courses and in my private work, we go in and have very specific meditations on awakening the womb. But for right now, it's really a matter of just starting to just have an awareness and make a connection to her and think about, like, and also as you start to make that connection, it's something you can do even, when you're laying in bed in the morning or at night before you go to sleep, even, maybe falling asleep in that space of like feeling the womb. It's also, Blanca says, how do you suggest we connect to the womb? It's also a matter of just like when you're moving through space, like feeling like, oh, where's my center of gravity? Can I drop in? Can I breathe from there? So what I'll do, I have an audio recording of a womb meditation that I can share with you as I can put that on to the HQ. But, just as a guideline, what can be really helpful is there's a womb mudra, which is basically a downward facing triangle like this, where you put your two thumbs together and you point your fingers and create that little triangle. And you take that and you You lay down, and you can bend your knees if that's comfortable, or you can open them, like placing the bottoms of your feet together and opening your knees outward, or they can just be bent with the feet face down. And you place this womb mudra underneath the navel. And you find a place about a half inch to an inch below where it feels just like, it'll almost feel like a magnetic pull of like, oh, this feels good. And don't get too focused, like, is this the right place? Is this the right place? You'll just kind of go where it feels good in that range. And just place the hands there and just breathe into that area, feeling the weight, feeling the warmth of the hands. And then as you take a few breaths there, then you start to drop into the center of the body, because that womb energetic point isn't on the surface, it's in the center, right under there where you have your hands. And so it's really just dropping in and feeling that energetic point and just breathing into it. And what I'm offering you right now is just, like I said, this isn't like a deep womb meditation. It's just starting to get connected to that space. It's just having an awakening and awareness that that energetic center is there. All right. So for your homework, what I would like for you to do is, I'm going to give you a series of journaling questions. And you just pull it up. Okay, so see, actually, let's do some. I would like to actually do a couple of the journaling questions with you right now. And the first question is, do you personally identify with Artemis? And in what ways, if so, or why not? And this can lead into the second question, which is, what can Artemis support you with in your life? How do you feel like she could support you? In what area? In what way? What do you think that she has for you to learn or implement? And then tomorrow, you're going to receive the rest of the journaling questions, which go into some more specific things that she stands for, like placing boundaries, um, connecting to nature, this kind of thing. But just for now, getting a sense of where you feel like she could support you in your life and how connected you are to her. Now, I want to begin to speak with you about something else. So all of the warrior goddesses are here to support us in transforming. And what I mean by that is that this is the energy of movement. It's the energy of releasing something old, like allowing something to die, and then the birth of something new. It is moving through stagnation. And next week, I'm going to share with you some specific principles of transformation, how we apply transformation in our life. But I want to start to speak with you today around just getting clarity with what area of your life needs to transform. Where do you need to bring the warrior goddess energy? Where are you stuck? Where are you stagnating? What do you need to release and let go of? What illusions have you been allowing yourself to live from? These goddesses help us kind of remove that Vaseline over the lens, which I love that saying because that's very old-fashioned before we had all of these like filters for the cameras and stuff. But in the 70s, I think like photographers would put Vaseline over the lens to make something look like all like soft and pretty. And it's like the warrior goddess energy. What she brings in is essentially, it's kind of like putting us under the, the sensual goddess is like that flattering candlelight. The warrior goddess is like going in under the fluorescent bright light and like just seeing everything, like she wants to remove whatever illusions are there to just let us see what it is. And, the warrior goddesses all carry weapons, and it's these weapons that cut through the BS. And it's uncomfortable sometimes to look at that. We want to see the things that are all soft and pretty and light and flattering. And it's like, no, she is about us being a little bit uncomfortable. That sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. And the thing that is really powerful about this work is that if you can become friends truly with the real, authentic warrior goddess and invite her into your life, ultimately, your life is going to be a lot easier. So she will come find us when we're living in the denial, when we're living in the BS, when we're living in the stuck place, and kind of fuck things up a bit. And it will be really uncomfortable if we've been resisting it. If we've been resisting letting ourselves go into what needs to change or seeing the truth about something. We're going to work with Durga next week, and Durga is all about truth. But all of these goddesses have this in common, is that they want to cut through the shit. So when we become friends is when we invite her in, when we don't resist her. When we say, all right, I want to become friends with death. I want to become friends with what's uncomfortable. I want to become friends with my shadow, which we'll be getting to in our third week. I invite you in, and there's a way from that you become absolutely invincible in some capacity because you become friends with this. It's when you resist it that she kind of has to come in and, mess things up a bit for us to see it, to feel the pain. But when we can understand and accept that that's part of the process and actually invite it in, it's a lot less painful. So what I'm going to have you work on right now is really getting clear about what in my life actually needs to transform. And this part of the course in some ways is like going into the cave, going into the shadow. And we're going to go more and more in these next couple of weeks. And I don't want to scare you with that, because this is the part that women leave the course just feeling like, wow, that's where my life really changed. That there's so much value, there's so much treasure in this cave that the dragon is there protecting. And we're going to come in, we're going to go into that darkness where our eyes can start to then really see and become comfortable in that darkness and make friends with that dragon and really see that that's us, and then get that treasure. So I want to say that now, if if you're having any resistance to the darkness or to the shadow or the discomfort, I want to just really encourage you to breathe into that and keep moving forward, because there's so much treasure that's going to be here. So there's a quote I put in here from the I Ching that says, "It is only when we have the courage to face things exactly as they are, without any self-deception or illusion, that a light will develop out of events by which the path to success may be recognized." So this is speaking about really having the courage to really, see things exactly as they are. Turn on the fluorescent light. Really look at what's ugly, what's under there, so that we can really see the light to move where we want to go. So number one, I want you to choose one area of your life where you experience the most suffering or is in the most need of transformation. So if you've got your journal and a pad in front of you, go ahead and write that down. Otherwise, if you printed out the pages, there's also a page here. It's past Durga, actually, so you're going to turn about 5 more pages into the book, and it's the Truth into Transform exercise. And we'll talk more about Transform next week, but we're just going to begin to work on this today. So once you have that area, so it could be health, self-care, relationships, finance, career, home, once you have clarity on that, number 2, what you're going to do is you're going to write an honest appraisal. Now, we're not going to actually do that together right now, but I want you to do this homework in the next day or 2. And the honest appraisal, what that means is you're going to write out a truthful account of the situation. Acknowledge where you have been in denial or dishonest with yourself and or others, and acknowledge the ways in which you contributed to creating the situation, right? So you're going to be like, no flowers here. It's like the warrior goddess kind of is going to cut through your ego here. Our minds are working overtime all of the time to create these stories and these narratives about our life that kind of keep us from really seeing the actuality of things. So what I would love for you to do is just to write out like a really honest, like, okay, this is what's going on in this area of my life. And this is how I've contributed to it. It's not blaming yourself in any way. It's just being really, really honest. Does this make sense? And then the third piece is, what are 5 action steps you're committed to in order to transform the situation? So here what we're doing is just going in and kind of looking at where does the warrior goddess really want to come and help me out here? And I want you to get that she's going to come and help you out. Like, we've got a lot of support. We just need to actually first acknowledge where we need her, acknowledge what's going on, and then start to take some action on that. And I want you to ask for her support in it. So we're going to start to work with Durga next week. This week you have Artemis. So, Artemis, support me with this. Now, we're not, the wounded warrior goddess version is to kind of go into a sort of like tense, contracted overdrive. Oh my God, we're going to fix this now. I'm going to do this, and this. We're not going there, okay? We're still sensual goddesses. Aphrodite, Lakshmi, Oshun, they're still with us. And then we've got Artemis too. Artemis, she is really this master of how we do this in the feminine way. So you're going to be connecting to the moon this week. You're going to be connecting to your womb this week. And you're going to be really feeling into, how can I do this in the most feminine and receptive way? Does that make sense? Be like really, really honest. And it's kind of perfect. We're in a new moon in a way, because we're in this period where it's so dark. And then we have this energy where we're going to be, in the growth cycle. So, in this moment, to just really go in and say, okay, what needs to change? I want to spend the last few minutes tonight doing some physical work. So I'm going to be putting up some additional videos on our HQ as well that'll give you some ideas of different physical practices that you can do in your morning practice to call on the warrior goddess. What we're going to do right now is we're going to do a little bit of breath of fire, and then we're going to do a variation on that. Is there anyone who does not know breath of fire? And don't be shy if you don't, because it'll just help me to know. Emily? Okay. How much direction to give with that. Okay. And, oops. That's not what I meant to do. Okay. So we're going to do a couple rounds of breath of fire, which is getting this energy in our gut and our abdomen starting to move energy upward. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to say, okay, now we're going to do breath of fire with the sound of ha. So instead of like breath of fire, what we do is we inhale into the abdomen, a deep breath, and then we exhale rapidly through the nostril. And what we're doing is we're putting all the emphasis on the exhale. And if you can place your hands on your belly, you'll feel the belly go in on the exhale, and it automatically fills up on the inhale. So all the emphasis is on the exhale. So we'll do a couple rounds of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do something that's similar to a breath of fire, but what instead of actually inhaling and exhaling out through the nose, what we're going to do is we're going to make a sound. And it's going to be ha, 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 ha. So again, if you're placing the hands in the belly, you'll feel the belly go inward each time, and then the inhale happens automatically. It's ha, 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 ha. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stand up, and I'm going to move my chair. While we're standing, what we're going to do is we're going to pull our arms. I'll show you. We're going to do this. Ha, 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 ha. So you'll see that this is activating the pelvis. And the ha happens when the pelvis is going forward. So it's ha, 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 but very fast. And in some ways, what we're doing is that's a little bit like, it's kind of a masculine sort of motion. It's a little bit like a man, like a fuck motion. Like I'm fucking the world with my pelvis. Like I'm bringing my pelvis out into the world. And the warrior goddess energy, what we're doing here is we're activating this more assertive part of ourselves. We're bringing up that fire. And again, we balance that with this fluid movement that we started with the sensual goddess, but this is bringing in more staccato kind of motion and movement. And when you do this, you will feel amazing afterward. Like this is a great thing to do before you're about to give a presentation, or you're going to go in for a job interview, or anything like that, where you want to feel yourself just in confidence. Because as women, we tend to kind of have a concave thing going on with our body. We kind of take ourselves and our energy inward, and then everything's kind of like mulling around and like in there. And this is bringing it all outwards. And then what we're going to do is after that, we're going to place our hands on the womb, and then we're going to bring it into a little bit of sensual movement and free movement. So it's actually 7:30 right now on my coast. But I want to spend about 5 to 7 minutes with this. So if you have to go, I understand. But if you can stay on with me, because it's going to be really fun. So we'll do one round of breath of fire, and then we'll move into doing 2 rounds of breath of fire with the ha, and then we'll bring it up and we'll do 2 rounds standing. Okay? So I want you to go ahead and close your eyes and feel your pelvis and all the parts of your body making contact with the seat beneath you. Just let yourself get a little juicy for a moment, feeling your butt cheeks, feeling your thighs, feeling the support of the seat beneath you, feeling your limbs beginning to melt, and letting that energy move into the sexual center, and feeling like flame to candle wax, your awareness there, softening that part of your body as well. And you're going to go ahead and drop that cord, because we're still connecting into this earth Shakti, into this sensual goddess. And just taking in A couple breaths. And exhaling. Breathing in through that cord, feeling yourself sexually charged, feeling that part of your body, and exhaling. And then now you've just got a little bit of that juice there. Now we're going to move into breath of fire. So we're going to just do one round, flapping the abdomen in 30 times, exhaling out through the nose. Inhale and begin. And inhaling. Ideally, we would do 1 or 2 more rounds of this, but we're going to move right away into the abdominal flapping with the sound of ha. So, inhaling. And begin. Ha, 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 ha. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. We're going to do another round. And begin. Ha, 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 ha. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale out through the mouth. And then standing. And we're going to do 2 rounds of this. We're going to begin. Inhale and ha, 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 ha. All right, now we're going to do round number 2. Inhaling. Ha, 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 ha. Inhale and exhale. And now I'm going to invite you to go ahead and place your hands on the womb. And I want you to just begin to move the pelvis around in a little bit of circles. And maybe it wants to move backwards and forwards in that kind of staccato movement. And then let it go back into doing circles. And finding how it wants to move. And letting, you can imagine it's almost like you're stirring that cauldron. Letting all of the movement originate from the womb area. And if it feels good, you can keep your hands there. If your hands want to begin to move, you can let it become more of a dance. Bring the hands up. For a moment, I want you to remember that image of the woman with the fireballs in her hands that's on the cover of the Warrior Goddess section. And I want you to imagine you're her. I want you to feel yourself as her. So you can take your hands, if you want, up above and feel that fire, that lightning and electricity going back and forth between the hands. Feel the flames coming up behind you. Maybe there is a cauldron in front of you, or a fire you're dancing in front of. If you had her power, if you were a priestess at her level, what would you be conjuring? What would you be a stand for? Can you imagine bringing this energy into your life, into your place of work, into a bar, a dance club, into the grocery store? How would she buy pregnant eggs? How would she move through space? How would she walk into the post office? All right, beauties, we're over time, so I'm gonna just bring us back down for a moment. There's so much. There's so much I want to share with you with this energy. And I really encourage you this week to find music. I'll share with you what this song was when I send out the recording tomorrow. But I love music that invokes this energy, that invokes the dark energy, that invokes the warrior, that invokes the fierceness, the priestess, and move to that energy. I want you to have Artemis, have that vision of this priestess woman in your mind's eye, and call her in certain moments, like in those day-to-day places where you're going, like, oh wait, how would she show up? How would she move through space? I'm going to send you more questions to journal about with Artemis, and then I really encourage you to do just these subtle womb and moon meditations, and then just let these women move through your consciousness, and then work with that transformation exercise that we just did. And I'm going to just open up in case anyone has last minute questions on anything. I thought I saw someone look like they wanted to ask something. No. Okay. All right. I'm going to unmute everyone, and we'll do one Ma chant together. How do I do this? Sorry. Where's the thing? Unmute. All right. So beauties, go ahead, close your eyes, bring your hands into a prayer position. And really, as this fierce warrior goddess priestess, we'll do one Ma chant together, thanking her for her presence, invoking her in our lives. Inhaling. All right, beauties.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Wonderful. Wonderful to see your faces. See you all next week with Durga.
Hi, ladies.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.